CBS Sports HQ presented by Enterprise. We are happy to be back together. Amanda Guerra, Chris Hassel, Brady Quinn, Pete Prisco. Fellas, it's nice to see you. Pete, it is not your favorite day of the year, but it is one of them.
Yes, absolutely.
You love your better than team.
I do.
You love putting it together.
My better than team.
You picked out some really good ones over the years. Last year might have been your best yet. I mean,
What?
You've got a guy on this list that Will Brinson actually mocked in the first round. Like, I've actually heard people talk about.
So the thing is, it's supposed to be like second, third, fourth round picks.
Sometimes guys sneak into the first round.
But look at last year. You had Sam Laporta, who was a second round pick, ended up being second team All-Pro, and Tank Dell.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all guys who were high up on the list.
They were high up on the list.
And wide receivers. Yeah.
There's a lot. Look, Stephon Diggs was a late round pick. Look what he turned out to be.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have had a lot of hits. Now, I've had misses too, but I've had a lot of hits. The whole idea is to find guys down the line a little bit who aren't surefire first round picks. Some of them will work their way into the first round and pick them out, watch their tape, decide if I really like them, and put them on the team. And the captain of the team has been some really good players over the years.
This guy can do it all. Played running back. On the defensive side, obviously, for Utah, Sione Vaki. He is the captain of Pete Prisco's better than team this season.
Why is he your captain, Pete?
Well, he wasn't initially going to be the captain, and the more I watched him, the more I liked. He's a guy that can do so many different things. He's great at the line of scrimmage. He can play on the back end. That's the concern for him. He's not great in coverage. A lot of people don't know if he's that good in it. I think he's better that he will be better on the next level once he gets more coaching. He's young to the game. Yeah. This is a guy went to college in 2019, then took Mormon Mission, and then went to Utah and played. So he's just learning the game. He plays offense as well. You should see him against USC. I'm sure you watched it. Yeah. He caught 2 passes out of the backfield, one for a wheel route for a long gain, and then he made another guy miss in the middle of the field for a long gain, went 70-something yards on a rushing play against Cal. He can do it all. I think he's one of those safeties in this era where you can play him down in the box and you can play him in the deep middle.
You know, do you hear people talk about prospects? They'll say, well, this guy's just a football player. Well, the compliment to him and what they mean when they say that is, it doesn't matter if you play him at safety, it doesn't matter if you play him at running back, it doesn't matter if you put him on special teams. He will make a roster. He will be probably a captain for at least a special teams unit. He's going to be able to play offense or defense in some capacity, whether it's a third down back, because he's able to catch the football, as you pointed out, though. He's a heck of a runner. He's smart. He can, see the blitzes, pick up blitz protection. He is the entire package as far as a football player, where if you're looking for a guy who's got versatility, if you're looking for a guy where one player is able to help you out in multiple different ways and help kind of open up roster spots, Sione Vaki is that guy. Now, again, not a first-round talent. No. Maybe not even second, but you start talking about third, fourth round, that's where, he's becoming off the board.
Cole Bishop is the other safety at Utah. He's going to go higher. He's going to go higher in the draft than he will. I think he's going to end up being a better football player. Vaki's going to end up being a better football player than Cole Bishop.
Okay.
Pete Prisco's better than team. Let's move to a quarterback who Pete says might be better than J.J. McCarthy at the next level, and that's Tulane's Michael Pratt.
Well, I don't know if he's going to be better than McCarthy, but I do think there's more value taking Pratt in the third or fourth round than there is, in my book, taking McCarthy at the top of the first round. I would take Pratt in the third or fourth, Michael Pratt from Tulane in the third or fourth round before I would take J.J. McCarthy at the top of the first round, because I think Pratt can do a lot of things. There were concerns about his arm strength. Could he drive the football? Talking to people about his pro day, they saw a significant improvement over him throwing the football.
You think he could be a starter?
I do. I think he's going to be a starter. And it might
this
take
upcoming
a year.
Season.
No, it might take a year or two for him to be a starter, but I think he's a developmental prospect who can go in, sit for a year or two, and then become a starter in the NFL.
The difficulty for him is the path to get to that starting spot. He's not going to be drafted as a first-round quarterback, so people aren't going to look at him as a day-one starter or a guy that maybe could be. It's going to be injury. It's going to be him playing well and then really, succeeding with that opportunity. But as far as decision-making, all the intangibles you're looking for, does he have the strongest arm in this class? No. He's got a strong enough arm to make all of the throws. He's athletic enough. And I think during his time with Tulane, you kind of saw the capability of what he can be and how he can operate within an offense. So I'm with Pete on this one. I think he's probably a mid-round pick at this point, but if he does get his opportunity in the right situation and circumstance, he can excel at times like we saw him at Tulane. Now, I will ask you this, though. He's a South Florida guy, right?
Yeah.
Went to high school in South Florida. Yeah. Didn't you have Jacoby Brissett, who was also a South Florida guy? Haven't you had a number of South Florida guys Mike White, I think, was one as well.
There's a couple of South Florida guys.
There's been a lot of South Florida quarterbacks that played high school ball in South Florida. I know Pete kind of just lazily threw in there.
But this kid has improved every year he was at Tulane. That's a good sign. And he also has a lot of starts, which is good when you go into the draft. So I think there's really a lot to like about Pratt.
Speaking of South Florida guys, not from South Florida, I had to look it up. He's from Mississippi, but Trey Benson, running back out of Florida State University. Pete, we know how you feel about running backs, but you think he could be the best back in this draft.
And I have a couple running backs on this list because you take them down the line. You don't draft them in the first round. We've heard that before out of my mouth, haven't we? I think Benson's one of those guys. He really came back from a devastating knee injury. I mean, every ligament went, and he became a big-time producer at Florida State. I think that change of scenery was good for him. I think mentally it was good for him. He's got the home run ability. He can make people miss. He probably dances a little too much at times, but I think he can get that coached out of him a little bit. I love the way he plays the game.
I think next to Jonathan Brooks, he's up there as far as the best back in this class. It'll be curious to see where he ends up, only because we saw in free agency how fast teams were to act in signing some of those free agent running backs. So maybe it gives you an indication of how they feel about this year's running back class. I'm with you, though. I think he's going to have a solid NFL career. Maybe not quite as much hype coming out like some of the other Florida State running backs, but again, very capable of carrying the load. Not that you see that anymore at the NFL level, but running back by committee, he'll be a nice change-up back for a lot of teams.
This next one is shades of when Jamie Eisenberg picks like Christian McCaffrey for his start of the week, because Pete Prisco is going with a guy who has been mocked in the first round of a lot of recent drafts, and that's kind of low-hanging fruit here. But Troy Franklin, I mean, we know he's good, Pete, but
yeah, how much better do you like him?
I don't think he's going in the first round, by the way.
Brinson does.
Well, Brinson saw I put him in the first round at one point, and he followed my lead.
So you don't think he's going to the first round, but you've mocked him to go in the first round?
Because I want him to go in the first round. I put him there because I think he should go in the first round, and I say that in the blurb. I think he should go in the first round. I do think he's going in the second round and maybe even the third round. People in the league are concerned about his being so thin. Is he able to hold up? I will say, I watched his day at the Combine. It was not very good. He did not catch the passes very well. He stumbled around a little bit. Then I watched his pro day, and at his pro day, he was significantly better. The guy makes people miss, and you know what else he can do? He can take a slant and go 80 yards. There aren't many guys that can do that. Look, you can see that. Now, USC was terrible on defense, but he has the speed to do that. I love this kid. I think he's going to get bigger and stronger, and he's going to be a real productive NFL player.
Yeah, obviously, pro days, combine, it's not playing football. I think you put on the tape, you see his speed, you see his ability to separate, you see what he can do once he gets the ball in his hands. You know, the only concern is when you stack him up versus the other wide receivers in this class. You know, Brian Thomas Jr., for example, kind of similar in the sense of they both have similar traits, stretch the field, vertical passing game, that sort of thing. So how do teams really view those two? But there's no doubt he could slide up into the first round depending on what team falls in love with him. But, I mean, you just said from first round to the third round, so you're kind of all over the place with how you're evaluating him right now.
Well, I really like him.
Have you had guys in your better than team that have gone in the first round?
Yeah, surprises have made their way in. Yeah, absolutely.
Because
they're not
hear that you love
surprises to
them.
you.
Well,
yeah,
they're not surprises to you.
No, of course
Pete's
not.
been banging the drum, and you know, scouts, they go, hey, we got to look at this guy now.
I had a guy in the league ask me for it today, so I'm telling you.
I was searching for pictures of Bill Belichick, and somehow it popped up where, you know, Pete Prisco.
Internet personality, Pete Prisco.
What? Great football minds kind of all together. You know that, don't you? Me, Bill, we're all together.
You guys kind of remind me of each other a little bit.
He's a curmudgeon. I'm not.
No one, okay. Talking about wide receivers, this is a very heavy wide receiver draft. You have Jaylen McMillan from Washington. Where does he stack up for you? I mean, Brady was talking about trying to find some separation between these guys.
Well, and the other two wide receivers at Washington are going to go, Polk and Odunze are going to go ahead of him.
Right.
But 2 years ago, when he was healthy, who had the most catches at Washington? It was McMillan. And McMillan is one of those guys that runs great routes. And he reminds me of a guy I covered and a guy I know very well, Keenan McCardell. Except he's faster. He plays a lot like Keenan McCardell, and I think he can really be a productive slot receiver, who's a tall slot receiver, by the way, which is usually a little different. But he was hurt all last year, and you saw in the playoffs how he was when he came back healthy. I think he's going to be a steal for somebody in the third or fourth round.
He was almost a forgotten man to your point last season, where really I thought the 1-2 punch was Odunze and McMillan, but once he got back in there, you kind of started to see again what they were capable of. He's a guy that I think, you know, Ricky Pearsall is one that kind of comes to mind. They're not getting a lot of credit for what they're capable of, but I think they will be able to excel with whatever NFL franchise picks them up, because they'll provide that solid number 2, number 3 option for them. I'm not sure he'll develop into a number 1 wide receiver. Could be wrong. But he's got all the traits and tools to be a starting wide receiver in an NFL roster.
It's funny because when I was watching Odunze last year, not this past year, the year before, I was watching his tape last summer, and I said, boy, he just doesn't look like everybody makes him out to be. But I kept watching McMillan make plays, and I said, I got to keep my eye on him more going forward. And then he got hurt this year. Odunze got way better. The improvement was incredible this year. But McMillan has the ability to be a good starting NFL receiver. I don't think he's ever going to be a number 1, but a good starting NFL receiver.
A different frame and body size, too, compared to Rome Odunze.
Washington was that Cinderella team that made that college football playoff run this past season. The year before that, it was TCU, and there's a TCU player on this list who played in that championship game. Jared Wiley, 5 seasons at TCU, really came on late in his COVID senior season.
Well, here's what he is. He was a high school quarterback, and so he understands the passing game. If you play quarterback, you know, you understand the whole big picture. And I think as a receiving tight end, I think he's being way undervalued in this draft. There's not a great tight end draft. We had that last year. This is not a great tight end draft. It's Brock Bowers, some of the other guys down the line. But I think this is a guy, if you put on the tape, he can really catch the football. He's got the ability to get down the field. Not a great blocker, a willing blocker. And that's something you can build on. There are a lot of guys that come into the league don't want to block at all. He's willing to do it. I love this kid as a 3rd-round pick.
Well, he's got a huge frame. He's every bit of 6'6". Saw him in person this past season. To your point, he catches the football well. He understands the soft spot and zone coverage. You know, versus man-to-man, I don't know that he's got a ton of speed and ability to be able to separate at the next level. That would be one concern that I would have. And you talked about the blocking. I mean, they didn't really use him in that capacity at TCU, and that's going to be something he's going to have to work on, because his frame and how he moves is more similar to your traditional wide tight end, where you're going to have your hand in the dirt. You might be in there on pass protection, helping out a tackle versus some of the better edge rushers. So he's going to have to improve that portion of his game, but there's no doubt when he does get out in the passing game, he's going to be a big, friendly target for his quarterback.
By the way, I looked it up. 40 time. Same exact 40 time as Travis Kelce.
And I don't see any comparison between
I'm just telling you, for people that ping him for his speed, he's got the same exact 40
The one thing you can continue to draw comparisons if you want to go that route is they both were quarterbacks, too, initially transitioned.
I'm not saying he's Travis Kelce. I'm just saying that the time
You just mentioned the name Travis Kelce.
Well, that time was the same.
We're going to interrupt this programming for just a second here, because we did want to talk about what we found on the internet today when it comes to Pete Prisco. Internet personality, and then apparently you're Bill Belichick. Look,
so if you Google
Pete Prisco, Bill Belichick comes up.
With internet personality as your bio.
I'm more curious, what is the bottom photo, the bottom right there?
Yeah, what
that
are you
was a promotional thing for my radio show back in the day.
Hey there, I'm Pete Prisco. Listen to Jacksonville Radio 105.9 The Buzz.
You know what? That's your real voice, too. That's who you really are right there.
Honestly.
Bill Belichick is way more of a curmudgeon than I am. Come on, let's be real. Oh, come on. I'm Captain Sunshine compared to that guy. No?
Pete's internet personality, if you look up Brady, it says media personality. Brady Quinn, right?
Oh, are we finally going to admit it? Is today the day?
I thought you were going to go for like a Robert Kraft, Arthur Blank, Bill Belichick, Pete Prisco.
Hey.
Like, who is behind the scenes pushing Pete from getting one of those NFL
But there is a cold, hard takes out there on the internet that has old draft stuff around, and they were playing bad takes from people when guys would get drafted, and when you were drafted, the people on...
You were one of them?
No, well, I had a bad take because I gave you an A+, but the people all over were raving about you when you got drafted that day. So it's a cold, hard take.
Speaking of, we'll go back to our regular scheduled programming.
Hey,
how's Cleveland doing now? They figured it out?
I gave him an A+. I'm going to sit here and admit that when he got drafted, I gave Cleveland Browns an A+.
Let's see if you give this next guy an A+. He is on your better than list. Linebacker Junior Coulson out of Michigan. And both of you like this guy both on and off the field. We've heard a lot about him in the Chargers recently, hoping he may be there in the second round. He may be gone by that point, Pete.
broken hands last year. One with a big club, one with a smaller club, and he played the entire season. He also had a bad foot that he played through the year before where he didn't practice and he played every Saturday. This guy is tough, and you know what he can do, I was surprised. He runs better in coverage than I thought he did. Because you think he's a big thumper because he's a physical kid, but he's much better in coverage. He's going to be a 3-down linebacker on the next level.
Yeah, he should be. I mean, look, he's solid in coverage. He obviously can penetrate and make stops in the backfield in the run game. He hasn't been playing football that long. That's the other thing. If you really check back into on his story, he has not been playing the game of football for that long. And I think the sky's the limit for this young man. I'm sure he'd love to go to the Chargers and then kind of plug into that defense and have Jim Harbaugh as, former head coach and to figure out how they can go get a Super Bowl and another championship together. But any team that gets Junior Coulson is going to be extremely pleased with his ability to match up with those, running backs, tight ends, guys who can kind of split out and do some different things, but also guys who are looking for linebackers who can blitz, linebackers who can drop into coverage. He really is the total package.
It's a great story, as you mentioned, because he's from Haiti and he moved to Tennessee and was adopted by a family because of circumstances, and Mikey Sanders-Still too. Both of them they're from Haiti, and they both came to America. Going to be really good football players.
You just mentioned Sanders-Still. He's another guy that is on your list. Another guy from Michigan, a guy that started as a wide receiver and then moved over to the defensive side.
And you know what? When you watch Michigan play, just watching him on a Saturday afternoon, he was everywhere. He can rush, he can attack the quarterback, he can play in the run game, he shows up in the coverage. I love him. Mike Hilton, good nickel corner for the Bengals. I think this kid's a little bit more athletic. He has a little bit more zip to him and his ability to run. I love this kid as a player.
That's who my comp was from Mikey Sanders-Still. This should be your co-captain, I think, of the better than team, because next to Vaki, it's not too obvious, because what people look when they see Mikey Sanders-Still is a smaller player, but his game really reminds me, it's similar to Mike Hilton as far as the measurables, what he's capable of, playing that nickel cornerback, but it's really Budda Baker, because he is aggressive. I mean, he will stick you, he will disrupt the wide receiver screen game on the outside. He's a playmaker. He's a great blitzer off of the edge too. Again, another guy who started wide receiver, as you mentioned, transitioned to defense, really understands the game. And I don't know where he's going to go, but I'm excited to see what player he is at the next level.
Papa Antoine Winfield, not the son, but the father. He was another one. When you looked at him, he could really play.
Yeah, still should be co-captain. I think you need to make that adjustment here.
Well, look, it was obvious because there's some people who think he might go in the back end of the first round.
Okay. We're going to go on to the last player on Brady's list, on Pete's list. But I want to start with you, Brady, because you've agreed a lot with Pete on this. I think you'd give most of them a good grade. This is a guy who is from South Florida. Yeah. Pete has specifically said he likes his fiery side. You've also said this guy's not as secret, Jarvis Brownlee.
No, he's not. I mean, he's a player that I think you could see him go in the second round. Probably not going to be a first-round cornerback because of the class and some of the guys ahead of him. But, he's a little bit undersized for today's cornerback that are all like 6 foot, 6 foot plus. I think he stands about like 5'10", something like that, but you would not know it watching him play. He's aggressive at the line of scrimmage. He will get up into people's faces. Now, as Pete would say, he does get a little grabby sometimes.
He's grabby.
But the reality is you like that aggressiveness from him. Playing off man, I always think is difficult for these cornerbacks to do anyway. I think that's the only area where you really see him struggle. But he's a guy that I think, again, he's going to go to some team. He's going to have that chip on the shoulder. That's how he plays and excel at the next level.
I don't know if he'll go in the second round because of his size, but I'm with you. He should go in the second round. He's not a big corner, but man, he is physical and he will mix it up. He's aggressive, sometimes too aggressive, not just grabbing. He overruns plays sometimes. He's a little too aggressive, but I didn't know where he was from when I was watching his tape, and then I came back and I looked it up and I said, oh, Miami. He plays like a Miami guy.
And what you mean is when he's there to set an edge, at times he almost kind of pursues too strong. They ended up getting outside of him. But that's like, again, I love seeing that from a cornerback. You don't see many cornerbacks nowadays that play with the aggressiveness that he does.
How many guys do you pick each year for your better than team?
20.
20. All right.
Last year was 25 because there were so many I liked. So this year I went back to 20.
All right. The rest of that list is on CBSSports.com. And you can hear Brady on the very latest Pick 6 podcast. We also have With the First Pick podcast. Those guys are going through, they're doing like full 7-round mocks for every team. You're with them tomorrow, Pete? Okay, who are you doing?
I don't even know. I think we're doing a mock draft.
All right, another mock draft.
We might be talking about my better than team, and Rick will pick it apart, unlike Brady, who actually agreed with me this year. I like it.
Brady,
well, those are all the ones that I agreed with. Yeah. we didn't send any that I didn't agree with. So.
I wanted to hear some you didn't agree with.
Brady on the latest Pick 6 with Will Brinson yesterday.